Okay, kind of looking at some of the depositions that they were in. I kind of left this alone for a little bit, but I knew I still had some to analyze, so I want to kind of come back to it and analyze it again. I do want to make mention of these depositions. This was a deposition between the Ramseys and I think Chris Wolf. And I think you can find that case online. Um, they seem to have been accusing the Ramseys seem to have been accusing Chris Wolf of being an intruder in the kidnapping of their daughter, JonBenét. And so Chris Wolf is coming back, and he is the plaintiff, I believe, in this suit, and the Ramseys are the defendants in this suit. And I was reading a little bit, and I downloaded the case. I was reading over a little bit, and we're going to talk about it in regards to other stuff in terms of the autopsy and stuff like that. But I want to make a note that Judith Phillips was a former neighbor, and Judith, in documentary titled An American Murder Mystery, JonBenét Ramsey, An American Murder Mystery, she said John was very elusive and quiet and a very successful businessman. She said he was very elusive. And if you know anything about this case, you know that there was friction. There became friction between Judith and the Ramseys because the Ramseys were telling everybody not to talk to the press, all of their friends not to talk to the press. And Judith said, well, when somebody tells me not to do something, I go do it. So she went and talked to the press. And then after that, the Ramseys came out with their own interview to kind of undercut her. So here is the continuation of the deposition. He just asked about Patsy. They just talked about corporal punishment, and then they just asked about Patsy being sick. And, I think he's about to ask him about the ransom note.
This profile. Is this profile familiar to you?
Generally, I think these were post behavior characteristics that one might expect.
And it should be noted, as you may know, John and Patsy, when they asked, and Patsy did John did his handwriting analysis, came back clean. Patsy did it, came back with some issues. I think in the documentary, American Murder Mystery documentary, I think the analyst, the handwriting expert, said it was some 200 similarities she found between the ransom note and Patsy's handwriting. And so that's kind of but Patsy and John came back after a while when they finally agreed to talk to police. I think 4 months later, they both came back and said, oh, well, it looks like a woman's handwriting. And they were kind of on the same page on that.
In the killer.
Were these characteristics that came from Mr. Douglas in his profile?
I don't remember. It's possible, but I don't remember.
Okay, because I just want you to examine it in conjunction with the statement that you had in your book that I believe the statement is that Douglas described the killer as someone with extreme anger toward John Ramsey, trying to hurt him in the most devastating manner possible. And I'm assuming that, correct, Mr. Ramsey, did you put this statement in the book because you subscribe to that? Is true?
I can't imagine anyone that I've made angry enough to murder a child. I took that at the opinion of someone who understands the criminal mind better than I do. But I'm not convinced that's correct.
Right. What I'd like you to do is just simply look at the elements on the second page there. And I'd like to ask you if, for instance, in the first element, I believe it's JonBenét's killer may have been suffering from some stress in the weeks and months preceding the crime. See that element in that profile? I'm going to ask you with respect to Patsy. Do you feel that Patsy was under any kind of unusual stress during the Christmas holidays? Your wife, Mrs. Ramsey?
No.
That's not a good question. You led him. You led him. You can't do that. You can't lead him. You because you led him first by saying, "Hey, it was said that the killer was under some stress. Do you think Patsy was under some stress?" I mean, well, dang, no. No, why would I say that now? I would have first asked, can you tell me if Patsy was under any kind of stress during the Christmas holidays, with the planning and the this and the that? And then came in with well, I asked because some of the similarities, and you might give your hand away for later questions and make them more cautious, but you got to be a little bit more crafty than that.
Did at any point during the holidays you observe her as working too hard?
No?
Do you feel that Mrs. Ramsey took too much responsibility on herself, helping herself and other people?
Well, she was a very giving person, but that's her nature. So I don't feel she took too much on, no.
Right. So you don't believe that she was under any unusual stress during that period?
Absolutely not.
Okay. The second element here is a triggering event, such as a job crisis, a crisis in a personal relationship, may have caused the individual to vent anger. All right, perhaps at a female close to him or to her, though it doesn't say her here, and perhaps at me personally. Now, the question I have, and I'm very sorry to ask you this, and I don't mean any disrespect, was there any stress in your personal relationship with Mrs. Ramsey that you would have observed at this time?
No.
Were you having any marital problems?
Absolutely not.
None. Okay. Okay. Now, with respect to two elements down, he possibly has increased his consumption of alcohol or drugs. Do you have occasion to observe Mrs. Ramsey drink at any point during this period?
During what period?
The Christmas holidays.
Well, we had a church party at our house at one point. We were at the Whites at one point. Patsy is not a heavy drinker. I don't recall an image of her having a drink. She might have had a glass of wine.
You're getting ready to lie. You're getting ready and you're getting set up for a lie. I ain't asked you nothing about a church picnic, about a church party. I didn't even ask you about Fleet White's party. I didn't mention a specific time period or place. I just said during the holidays, this person, or I said this person closer to the event might have increased their drinking. I'm asking you, did she start drinking more and more and more and not? This is the stuff that makes me concerned about your response. Instead of you knowing that Patsy did not, according to what you're going to tell me, did not drink more, is simply, nah, man, my wife's not a heavy drinker like that. That's it. You had to stop and do all this foolishness. Oh, we had a church party. We had Fleet White's party. But you're not about to sit here and just make my wife out to be a drunkard. I didn't say that. Freak.
But I don't.
Did you ever have occasion to see Patsy what you call inebriated at any point in your marriage?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Do you know if Mrs. Ramsey was taking medication at that time, during the Christmas holidays?
Do I know if she was?
Yes.
Not to my knowledge.
Now, the next element is he may have even turned to religion. Was it your observation that Patsy was a particularly religious person?
We both were.
Okay. Did there come a time during Mrs. Ramsey's cancer that she expressed to you that she had experienced an extremely intense spiritual, religious event in that?
We had a healing service that was conducted by our priest from St. John's. He prayed an Episcopal prayer that asked God to heal her body. Patsy returned to NIH within a week and took a CAT scan, and the cancer was gone. And we believe that that our prayers are answered. Yes.
Um, uh, do you or Patsy believe in the Holy Spirit?
Yes, I do.
Do you believe that the Holy Spirit is a agent for healing by God?
I think the Holy Spirit is part of the Trinity of God, and I don't know that I understand the Holy Spirit's role in healing. No, I don't. I don't know that one way or the other.
Are you familiar with Pentecostal religious beliefs that the true purpose of Christianity and Jesus' purpose was a healing ministry, and that the Holy Spirit was involved in that healing ministry?
I'm not familiar with that.
Well, I think he just said, I don't know why Mr. Hoffman asked that question, because he just said a priest. Not sure why he would introduce, which is typically Catholicism. I don't know why you would introduce Pentecostalism, which is different. Don't know what you're trying to get at there, number one. Number two, John's response about the Holy Spirit. Typically, if you're a rooted believer, you know about the Holy Spirit. I mean, that's easy. Like, yeah, the Holy Spirit is the agent of the Father, and he's doing the Father's bidding in terms of healing. That wouldn't be outside of his function. So when John says, oh, I don't really know too much about the Holy Spirit, I just know I walked up there and we got healed. Well, that tells me that y'all are not really going to church to be Christians or devoutly religious people. You're going to church for appearances.
Also, are you familiar with the religious concept of what is known as being in right relation to God?
Mm-hmm. No.
I
Just
don't
say
know of that as a concept. I've heard that phrase.
I was just wondering if you understood what that phrase meant
right.
to you.
Do I understand the phrase being in a right relationship with God?
One being in right relation to.
You would think that they are in kindergarten. Asking you, do you understand what it means to be in right relationship with God? And you would think that they are toddlers. Huh? What do you mean right relationship with God? What 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 does relationship mean? Now tell me what right means. Now, what you put them together? Oh my God. I forgot how annoying these were. I forgot.
God.
Well, that would not be how I would describe my relationship with God.
All right, I wanted to know that. The next statement, he may be rigid, nervous, preoccupied, in casual conversation.
Healing? No, I don't know that one way or the other.
Are you familiar with Pentecostal religious beliefs that the true purpose of Christianity and Jesus' purpose was a healing ministry, and that the Holy Spirit was involved in that healing ministry?
I'm not familiar with that.
Go to church every Sunday.
Also, are you familiar with the religious concept of what is known as being in right relation to God?
I don't know of that as a concept. I've heard that phrase.
I was just wondering if you understood what that phrase meant to you.
Do I understand the phrase being in a right relationship
Yeah,
with God.
one being in right relation to God.
Well, that would not be how I would describe my relationship with God.
Uh-huh.
All right, I wanted to know that.
Mhm.
But that's very telling because you know what right relationship means. That's a pretty good question. But I don't think Mr. Hoffman was asking it that way. But that's a pretty good question because it tells you something else about what John is saying. I'm asking you, it's essentially the same as me saying, do you think you and Patsy are on good terms right now? Yes or no? And as a devout Christian, if someone says, are you in right relationship with God? Or do you think you're living right according to the scriptures or the Holy Spirit or what have you, or the Trinity? Your response would be like, well, I think I'm trying to do everything that the Lord is trying to ask me to do. So, I mean, I'm okay. I'm doing the best I can. I ask forgiveness of my sins. John responded, in essence, I don't think that applies to me right now. Well, because your response should have been, if you had no guilt, your response should have been, hey man, I try to do everything. I try to be a good Christian man. I try to go to work. I try to pay my bills, try to pay my tithes. I try to be good in the community. I'm doing everything that I can. That I think John's response was, I don't think I'm in right relationship with God right now. I don't think that's how I would describe my relationship with God right now. Why not? What else are you doing? Because that's indicative of somebody thinking of something. It's very present. It's very conscious in their mind that I am doing something. I have done something. I have sinned in some way. So I cannot morally say that God and I are on good terms. What would you have done where you and God are not on good terms, John?
The next statement, he may be rigid, nervous, preoccupied in casual conversation. Um, how would you describe your observations of Patsy, Mrs. Ramsey's, Mrs. Ramsey's conversational, attitude? Do you find her to be rigid or nervous or preoccupied in conversation?
I mean, in general?
In general.
No.
During the Christmas holidays leading up to the death of your daughter, did you find her to be in any way rigid, nervous, or preoccupied?
No.
In conversation?
No.
Okay. Well, the next one I think speaks for itself.
A better question, though he probably didn't know it now, but a better question that we know today, according to the documentary, when Detective Linda Arndt was left by herself, she was left by herself in the room, and the way they describe it in the documentary, she was left by herself, as many of you know, in the room with all of the Ramseys and their friends. And the way they describe it is, not only did the Ramseys call their friends in the morning time to come through and trample the crime scene, but people came throughout the day, continuing to bring in, this is a crime scene. They mentioned another case I think I saw somewhere. It was such a difference in the response to the cases. There was one case where someone was unalived, and the family was immediately, and as in all cases, as in many cases, I'll say that, or what I perceive to be many cases, the family is immediately questioned. But here, the Ramseys were allowed to grieve, which should not have happened. And not only were they allowed to grieve, but they were allowed to bring people in to the crime scene. Number two, number three, when Detective Arndt was left there, I think the excuse that the cop gave was, We were kind of short staffed. We needed people elsewhere. And so we left Detective Arndt there by herself. But the point that I'm about to get to, I'm trying to make, is that they said that John was so physically and noticeably anxious and growing more nervous that Detective Arndt said, okay, I'm going to give you a task. I'm going to give you something to do. They said that 2 cops had already been on the scene and went down there into the basement, didn't see anything, couldn't find anything. But Detective Arndt was like, hey, I'm going to give you a task. Get that nervous energy out, is essentially what she was trying to say. Why don't you go try to see what you can find? She didn't tell him specifically what to do. She said, go see if you see anything out of place, is what she said. Go, if my understanding is correct me if I'm wrong. Go see what you can find. I did not tell you specifically to go retrieve a dead body. I just said, go see if anything is out of place. You went down to the basement and you went down to the cellar and you went and found someone. What a coincidence. Okay. Listen to what you're telling me.
He may have tried to appear very cooperative with the authorities. Have you tried, to the best of your knowledge, to cooperate with the authorities?
Well, I think we've detailed that pretty accurately. We
No, you didn't.
were very willing to cooperate with them, given that their intentions were to be trusted.
And who makes that determination? Because you guys pushed against the cops when the cops said, hey, I need to talk to you. You guys were trying to call and get out of town. That was weird. On the day of, your daughter's body was under the Christmas tree and you were calling your pilot. Hey, can you fit me in and get me out of town to Atlanta? Where would you be going? As everybody was questioning.
He may have quickly constructed an alibi for his whereabouts the night JonBenét was killed.
That's what I was going to say. And the cops were trying to pull y'all in, but y'all quickly retained counsel, and they tried to pull you into the station to, the documentary was saying that they tried to pull them into the station to talk and get their interviews separately, but John and Patsy would not interview separately. And Burke was off limits, I think the documentary was saying. But then later, like 3 or 4 months or something, now they went on the offensive in the media, but I think like several months later or something like that. Then when they were able to talk to the police together, or when they were ready to be separated, then that's when they decided to come forward.
That brings me to the issue of the next area I want to go into, which is the area of the ransom note, which I'm going to show you page 407, which.
Okay. So he's about to go strictly into the ransom note. So I guess there were some claims that he was making. So I'm going to stop right here and come back and try to focus specifically on what he was saying about the ransom note, because he looked like he was, or it sounded like he was talking about some sort of characteristics of something. So stop it right here and come back and we'll kind of move forward with the ransom note.